that link for everybody to do their ratings. I reckon we do that maybe next week,
Mm-hmm.
as a filler episode, and we can go from there.
Make sure you're recording.
Yes, make sure I
Mm-hmm.
am recording. Recording in progress. Hello, YouTube. We are live on YouTube. Um, Thank you for joining us live on YouTube. If you are joining us, hit subscribe, hit like, comment in, give us your thoughts as we review the Hungarian Grand Prix and let us know what you thought of it. And if you vehemently disagree or agree with anything we say, that is perfectly fine too. I can't promise that Coops won't come and kill you, but I won't.
Oh, I don't know. It depends.
You just can't trust them Scots.
No, if you can distract me with whiskey, it's fine. I mean, I'm not a very good killer. It's very easy for me to get distracted.
Right then. Hello and welcome to the Everything F1 podcast. My name is Sean, and joining me to review the Hungarian Grand Prix is Coops. Evening, Coops.
Hello, how are you?
I am good. I enjoyed this one. Did you?
Yeah, it was good. It was. I think Morgan, whose comments on the podcast a lot, is my son. For anyone who doesn't know, he watched it with me, and he basically said it was a traditional Grand Prix. It was very strategy based, kind of where's this going to end up? Even the commentators, Martin Brundle said in the last few many laps, this could be quite interesting. And so it
Hmm,
was good. It was a very good traditional esque Grand Prix and a very traditional old school track as well. So
for
I
sure.
thoroughly enjoyed it.
Saw a lot of comments saying that, oh, it was a bit boring, oh, it's not exciting and stuff like that. But everyone I've spoken to really liked that. And I think to your point, it was exactly that. It was a kind of an old school Formula One race. It was a bit of a strategy battle. There was a bit of a back and forth. There was a fair bit of intrigue, and we nearly had a total wipeout on the second last lap, which would have led to a Fernando Alonso podium, which would have made me happier than a pig in what pigs
Tough.
roll around in and stuff. But that didn't happen. But anyway, we will get into the full review of that. We are, of course, Everything F1. You can find us on all socials: Facebook, Instagram, X, and Threads. We are at Join EF1. On TikTok, we're at EF1 Official. And on YouTube, we're Everything F1, all one word. And if you're listening, wherever you're listening, we'd love it if you go over to our YouTube channel and hit subscribe. We are trying to reach 500 and then 1,000 subscribers as soon as we can. When we hit 500, we'll be giving away a Lego Speed Champions F1 set to one lucky subscriber. So all you have to do is to subscribe. So head over Everything F1, all one word, over on YouTube. And we, of course, stream all of our podcasts live now on YouTube as we record them. So you can get involved as well and share your thoughts and opinions. Now then, oh, and one final message, of course, we are sponsored by the raceworks.com. So I'm going to do that again. We're also sponsored by the raceworks.com. Head over to the raceworks.com for all of your F1 and motorsport merch, particularly now as we get into the summer break of Formula One. If you want to stock up a bit, if you're going to any of the second half of the year races, then head. Oh, sorry, sorry, my laptop had a bit of a mare there. Sorry, I'll do that again. This is what you get when you're live. We're also sponsored by the raceworks.com. Thank you, as always, to them for their continued support of the show. If you're looking for any F1 or motorsport merch, head over to theraceworks.com and use our code EF1 at checkout for 10% off site wide. I know I will be visiting them over the next couple of weeks as I prep to go to the Italian Grand Prix in a month. And if you're going to any of the second half of the season races, theraceworks.com, use code EF1 at checkout for 10% off any merch that you want to buy. Now then, Coops, the Hungarian Grand Prix. I think we have to start at the very start and talk about Ferrari because it was very much of a tale of what wasn't it? As you sit there in the lovely Ferrari oversized shirt, which I'm a little bit jealous of because Olga has a white one. I don't have any of them, and I maybe should get my hands on one at the
Yes,
raceworks.com between
yes.
now and Italy.
And just
Um,
a warning, they are oversized. This
yeah,
is
they're
a
huge.
large. I'm normally an extra large, and even this feels a bit big. In a good way. Not like, oh my God, it's like a tent. It's just, yeah. If you're an extra large, go down one.
Yes, definitely. Ferrari then, obviously Charles Leclerc started on pole and Lewis Hamilton had an just atrocious weekend. But let's start with Leclerc. Phenomenal pole position, helped potentially a little bit by the fact that McLaren lost over half a second in pace between Q2 and Q3 as the conditions changed rapidly. But take nothing away from Charles, that was a great pole talk us through what happened in his race. Where did that pace go? Because there are a number of different stories and reasons and explanations for it.
Well, Ferrari might never probably tell you the real reason, if there is
Mm.
actually a real reason. Charles Leclerc in the car was really frustrated, and really quite animated towards his. I think it was things like, you guys, we're going to lose this. This is ridiculous. What is it you're playing at? All that kind of stuff. Uh, but Ferrari just don't have the pace for the McLarens, and I don't think there's anything that Ferrari could have done under normal circumstances that would have kept Charles Leclerc in the first place. I think he could have maybe kept himself on the podium if his pace was a wee bit faster, but the Mercedes is a pretty decent car. Um, it was reported apparently that there was some sort of chassis issue that came out
Mm.
in kind of the latter third of the race, which basically meant that that's how he lost his podium. But it's kind of a it's kind of the story of Ferrari's season. They just flatter to deceive, and once they
Mhm.
get themselves in good positions, they never stick it. Other than Hamilton getting the sprint one, which we figured out why, because they ran the car illegal, and
Pretty much.
then in the Grand Prix they got themselves disqualified anyway, so we know why they go on that one. Uh, so yeah, it's just another match, another Grand Prix in the season of disappointment for Ferrari, to be honest.
It certainly was, and as you said, Ferrari might never tell us the full story as to what exactly happened. Obviously, Charles Leclerc was, as you said, extremely animated. He seemed to think that they had ignored something that he wanted, maybe on setup. There's some talk of it being like a front wing change at the pit stop that happened. Um, George Russell seems to think that they overinflated the tires in the later stint because they were worried exactly of the plank wear being too low again, and they were going to get disqualified. And the only way they could jack the car up mid race is to just overinflate the tires. I think that would better explain a lack of like a 2 second a lap distance, a 2 second a lap deficit that he was hit with in the second half of the race, which was insane. Um, but whatever the car issue that Charles was particularly animated about, and I saw a fantastic meme of it was basically the Star Wars crawl,
Yeah, so
but
that
using Charles Leclerc's insanely long radio message because it was that long. It's hard to see him beat up like that because all things considered, this was a really, really good weekend for Charles, and a podium was absolutely on for him.
it was until that latter part of the race, and you just slowly started to think, oh, they'll be lucky if they get the top four. They'll be lucky, I think they were lucky to get four. Uh, I mean, if the issues with the car kept in maybe halfway through the race and not as late as it was, they would have been lucky to stay in fourth place.
Mm.
Uh, it's just so you kind of start to lose reason or any kind of explanation for Ferrari's performances. And oh, is this it? Have they fixed it? Oh no, they're tenth. Oh, all right, okay, never mind. It's just, and we'll get on to Hamilton shortly, and it's really disappointing, and it's actually quite painful to watch. And you have a bit of empathy for Lewis, and his post race conversations with Sky Sports was really bad and emotional, and it's I don't want to talk too much about Hamilton just now. We probably will in a minute, but yeah, it's bad. I don't know
Well,
what they do to fix it.
I have no idea either, and let's exactly move on to Lewis because obviously he started 12th and finished 12th.
Mm.
Um, he wasn't spectacularly far off the pace in Q2, but such was how close um, the field was. I mean, in Q1, the spread from first to 20th was less than a second. Yeah, 1:15.8 was Charles's time in Q2, in Q1, sorry. 1:16.2 was Albon's in 20th. So less than a second separated the entire field in Q1. So, and as we get into Yuki Tsunoda later, good result from him ended up being knocked out in Q1 because everything was so tight. But Lewis's Q2 time was a 1:15.7. And Charles Leclerc's top time, sorry, the top time in Q2 was Lando Norris's 1:14.8 because the McLarens ran away with it. But Lance Stroll was third there in a 1:15.1. So Lewis was only half a second behind second and third place and knocked out in 12th place. But he's only 3 tenths behind Charles and knocked out. So like when you look at it that way, if you look at the times in isolation, that doesn't look too bad. But starts 12th, a track he absolutely loves, but loving a track does not make any difference on a track that's hard to overtake on when you're starting 12th in a car that you're not comfortable with. Where I bet he's delighted. Gavin Bortoletto said he hates the fact that it's the summer break now because he wants to keep driving. I'd say Lewis Hamilton is the happiest man in the world to not
Yes,
think about Formula One for the next month.
yes. He needs to. He need when you hear him saying he's useless and how do they fix the car? Nothing wrong with the car. Get a better driver. And this is a 7-time champion. Like you have to look at that, and if you've got a bit of empathy, you think, right, Lewis, you need to make sure you've got the right people around you right now. There's someone needs to throw an arm around you and just like, okay, let it out. If you want to have a snotty cry in someone's shoulder, have a snotty cry in someone's shoulder. That yes, they're professional athletes, but that was quite. It wasn't nice to see. It was
Mm-mm.
very. You just were like, oh no, and I know there's a percentage of the world and the internet, social media's not great at certain points. It will probably have a good laugh at that. And, okay, that's your decision. But for the more normal people and more empathetic Formula One fans, even if you didn't like them, you kind of have to be like, oh, that's not good. Uh,
I'm not a Lewis fan, as I've said multiple times. I've nothing but the utmost of respect for him as a Formula One driver for everything he's achieved. You'd be insane and not a true Formula One fan to not think that way. I'm not a Max fan either, but I can purely respect what he's done. Um, and I know what Lewis did at the start of the year. He obviously had to hype up the fact that he was moved to Ferrari. It was a fresh start for him in a new team. Things were kind of souring a little bit in Mercedes. Um, but not that I necessarily put any blame to this on Lewis, but the whole portion of the internet who was like, oh, 8 times champion, 100%, 9 times champion, it's going to happen. He's going to win the championship this year. It's guaranteed. And he wins the sprint race, which was awesome. But as you said, technically illegal. They were found out for it the next day. It's all well and good, but he's struggling, he's struggling, he's struggling. While Mercedes are doing particularly well, where George Russell is doing very well this year, Kimi Antonelli is struggling in the other seat. It's not a second seat in Mercedes thing. It's the era of cars. It's the
mhm.
ground effect car. I've been saying this for years. I'm pretty sure for as long as I've been on this podcast, I've been saying that Lewis Hamilton just cannot get to grips with these super high ground effect downforce cars. They're slow, they're slow to respond. They're much less twitchy and alive than the W11 for example like that. They are much more hard to get it's hard to explain what they're like, but whatever it is about them, it's the era of car that just doesn't suit Lewis Hamilton. And I said this last year, I said this at the start of this year, I'll say it again. Moving to Ferrari was never going to feckin' fix that. And anyone who thought otherwise, even Lewis, if he thought otherwise, was being very naive. I don't think Lewis thought otherwise. I think Lewis knows well that he's just struggling, and the opportunity for a fresh start and everything made total sense. That's fine. Next year, different story. These cars will not be ground effect cars. They'll be more reliant on the actual wing aero. Different story. Ferrari might sail a march, but I'm sorry. Anyone who thought that Lewis Hamilton going to Ferrari was going to suddenly make these cars easy for him to drive, it didn't, it won't, and it will continue to not. I hope he gets better. He has a win. He has a podium in him. I'm convinced of that, and but I feel really really sorry for him that he's now resorting to beating himself up. And people shit on Lando Norris for years for doing that to himself.
Mhm.
I
He
don't
did it
want
all
people.
the time.
Yeah, I don't want people to shit on Lewis Hamilton for doing that to himself, but he needs to stop doing it.
If he's going to do it, he does it in private, and I don't mean that
100%.
I don't mean that in he bottles it up. He goes with his very trusted circle. He has a good rant about himself. He calls himself an idiot. He calls himself useless to them because that bubble it stays there, and then they
Yeah.
can support that right there and then. Like you could kind of sense that even the person, I think was it Lee McKenzie that was having a chat with him in the pen. I can't remember.
Rachel Brooks
Was
was
it
chatting
Rachel?
to him for
So,
Sky a lot.
sorry,
Yeah.
sorry, Rachel. Uh, you could kind of sense that even she wanted to say something as a friend to him and not as a
Mm.
journalist. She kind of she had a you could kind of sense that she was kind of taken aback by it and kind of was like wanted to throw the arm around him and have a wee, you're all right, like,
Mm.
But she knew she had to be the journalist and there had to be that kind of step away. Uh, so yeah, it's scary to see someone who is a professional athlete who's done this since what 2007, uh,
Hmm.
and it's a high and done it at the peak. He came in at the top and stayed there. Which I think a lot of people forget how much that takes for someone to stay at that level for as long as they have done, or in that expectation. For him to come out, and I don't remember him ever being that downbeat. Ever.
I've seen it. We've seen him be pissed off before. We've seen him take pot shots at the FIA and want to murder Felipe Massa for smacking into him at every other race in 2011. But I've never seen him like this before. And
Yeah,
it is really hard to watch. And he is a seven-time world champion. But I mean, the fact of the matter is, we didn't see Sebastian Vettel publicly beating himself up like this when Ferrari wasn't going his way, and particularly when Aston Martin wasn't going his way. We didn't see Michael Schumacher beating himself up like this when Mercedes were a bit crap and the car didn't suit him. It's not the attitude of a seven-time world champion, and it's a bit harsh to say, but he needs to be held to a higher standard. He needs to hold himself to a higher standard. I know he does.
he
I
does.
know that's why he's so beat up at the moment because he expects so much more for himself. But
I
he
think
is the face of Formula One, and he has a lot of fans around the world who will not want to see him like that, will be very, very empathetic towards him, but who are also going to, in the way they did to Lando Norris, absolutely drag him through the mud for for comporting himself like that in interviews, unfortunately.
yeah, and I think sometimes there's that element where the setup with the drivers have to go to the media also maybe has something to play on it because
Hmm.
my understanding is, and this might be wrong, and if you want to come into the comments and socials and just correct us, but they have a set time they need to go. They can't leave it too long. So clearly he's came out, he's had a quick debrief, showered, whatever he does, but he's still dealing with processing everything,
Hmm.
and then he has to go in front of the media. And you know yourself, like when you're like any of us were pissed off or angry, then somebody asks a question and you kind of snap, you react, and then you realise after, oh, hold on, actually, I didn't quite mean it in that way. But
Mm.
like we can deal with that because usually it's a very it's just normal. We're not in the world in front of a camera with thousands of people. When they say something, that's it out there, that's it. You can't take it back. In the way that we could, if I was to snap at you in a conversation, I say, sorry about that, I'm having a bad day. That's it. It doesn't go anywhere else.
Mm.
But the minute that someone like Lewis says something like that, and because he's Lewis Hamilton, it goes further, and it's remembered for the right reasons. It'll be remembered probably more for the wrong reasons because people will use that and beat him over the head with it. Is this the moment that he realised he was rubbish? You can kind of already see it in
Hmm.
the way it'll be used. And you're right, he kind of needs to think, right, I need to stop doing that and maybe not lie, but he has to have a way of saying things that aren't quite like that and then deal with that personally with his bubble
For sure.
and I think there has been comments, there's things going on in the background, and again, you can't really say that without saying what these are because people are going to then speculate, is it him? Is it personal life issues? Is it Ferrari or there's a power struggle? And then that's not going to be helpful because these are
Mm.
questions that journalists are then going to ask him. What did you mean by that? What does that mean? Does that mean this? And then you're spending more time defending things than dealing with what's coming or positives that might come. You're stuck in that negative kind of negative type of questions because you're
Mm.
reminded, or remember when you said this then and you made this comment, and then he's back to remembering how he was. And, it's a hard thing to get out of when you put these things out there. I
Yeah.
think he done it before when it was Mercedes, didn't he? When he was like, "Yeah, there's reasons why I'll be half a second slower," and what do you mean by that? And he just kind of walked off, and you're like, "Mate, come on,
Yeah.
let's not play the
Yeah,
game."
and he's been in the game for long enough to know that a soundbite like that will make the media go absolutely nuts, and they'll never let him forget it.
Hmm.
So listen, hopefully this break now, it's what, 3.5 week break
Yep.
before Zandvoort. And unlike the last 3 week break we had, this is a full shutdown. There'll be no simulator work. You won't have to see anyone. You can go off on his holidays and do whatever you want. You can go home and sit in his apartment in Monaco with Roscoe for 2 weeks and not talk to any other humans. Might do him the world of good. For all we know,
Hmm.
he's going to do more Italian lessons. We don't know, but a break, I'm sure. I'm sure he's delighted about it. Moving on to McLaren.
Hmm.
Fantastic weekend for McLaren, depending on what side of the garage you're on. Um, Not as controversial as last year, thankfully. Obviously, Lando Norris finished first from Oscar Piastri, and I suppose we'll talk about both of them in the same breath. Lando's first lap was, or well, his start was okay, and then he got pinched out by Oscar. Nothing illegal, nothing wrong with it. Oscar was well within his rights. He didn't run him off the track. Lando just kind of committed to his line. Oscar saw him and decided to defend against him, which cost Lando a lot of places. Drops the fifth, recovers, and gets put onto the one-stop strategy. So lots of people, there's a particular channel who tried to over dramatize this, saying that, oh my God, McLaren are favoring Lando. How could they not put Oscar on the one stop? And this is awful. They're so unfair. It's British bias. Blah blah blah. Come on.
No.
What did you make of the strategy?
I think it wasn't necessarily just, I don't think it was a strategy that done this. I think it was Lando. I think the strategy wouldn't have worked without Lando doing what he did and managing to be that tire whisperer and just being able to get into that window with that window. And we talk about that a lot in Formula One. You hear it a lot, getting into that window, getting into the zone. It just clicked for him. Everything worked, conditions, tires, the way he was driving. Other than the first lap, he didn't put a foot wrong at all. The first lap's always been a bit of a slight weak spot for him. And this wasn't necessarily, as you've touched on already, it wasn't really his fault. It was just a circumstance. It's a very narrow first corner, and he committed to a bit. Piastri did exactly what any other driver would do, just narrowed the corner, shut the door a wee bit, not violently, but just enough. And unfortunately, because he had to lift off the throttle, other folk were on the throttle, lost a couple of spots, and he recovered. Uh, it's the drive that I think a lot of people, if you're a Formula One fan, but mostly McLaren, that you've always really wanted and expected them to do, and it just
Hmm.
never quite came off. Like there would always be a slight error somewhere, or something that would put him on the back foot, or and it just clicked for him, and it just worked, and it was really really nice to see. And I still think it's Piastri's championship. I don't think he's quite turned that narrative, but it's not going to take much more. If he does another similar drive at Zandvoort, then you're going to start thinking this is going to get tasty.
Mhm. It's a 14-point swing in his favor, having won the race versus finishing second.
Yeah,
As in he's closed the gap by 7 points rather than it being extended by 7 points. So it is a 14-point swing by finishing ahead of Oscar.
yeah, because he's nine
But
points behind, or he
nine
would have
points
been
behind now.
20. He would have ended up 22 behind, and that's big.
That
20,
is big with not with 10 races to go. Yeah.
yeah, 22 is a race win effectively, and all Piastri needs to do is stay with him. He doesn't
Yeah.
even need to win everything. When you're 22 points ahead, we tend
Mhm.
to go. But when it's nine between them, that's very
No,
different.
nine
That,
if
that
Lando if it's a 1-2 in Lando's favor again in Zandvoort, which if last year's form is anything to go on, it might be.
hmm
29 seconds he ran away with it last year, and the McLaren was not a dominant car yet back then. Um, then it's a 2-point championship, and Oscar Piastri must be starting to get quite happy with that gap that there's no point for fastest lap this year,
Yes.
because he could like Lando could easily narrow it down to 8 points to 1 point in Zandvoort if there was still a point for fastest lap. But there isn't. No, it was a really really good race, and I think this is where obviously this is where the intrigue came from. If you're a Formula One fan and you've seen Hungary before, when I was at the Hungarian Grand Prix in 2019, which is the race when Max pitted 20 laps early. Lewis was on a one stop. Max pitted with 20 laps to go and chased him for 20 laps and passed him with like a lap to go. Um, there was nothing else going on in that race at all. I remember absolutely nothing at all of that entire race. I remember more of the support races, but I vividly remember Max chasing Lewis and having two phones out and timing the two of them as they passed past the start the point in front of us to see who was getting close, and everyone around me was getting mad into it, going, "He's 10 seconds, he's 9 seconds, he's 8 seconds," and that was exactly what this felt like.
hmm
Um, and as you said, what Lando needed to do was tire whisper. He did get helped by traffic as much as he said it was going to screw him. Um, but I don't think that counts as him being gifted a win. I don't think he was
Mm-mm.
gifted a win. I think he really
No.
had to work for it.
Oh yeah.
That was not a guaranteed win. Oscar, I saw the graph of how quickly Oscar closed him down. Oscar won that race by everything except finishing over the line first.
Yeah. And sometimes in Formula One, it's not always about luck. It's being in the right place at the right time, and there's always these wee variables. And the like we talked about the Japanese Grand Prix earlier on in the season. With the new surface, it took away the variable about tyre wear. So
Hmm.
that's why it ended up being one of those rare Japanese Grand Prix where it was really boring. So the variables you had there was just it was all the variables kind of fell in Lando's favour, and then everything was timed pretty much perfect. I think back in the day they said if you run out of fuel on your in lap from qualifying, because remember that it was like an hour, you went out, did a fast lap, you came back in. If you ran out of fuel on the third lap, then they've put exactly the amount of fuel they need in the car because weight was bigger and it was a bigger issue back then than it was now. Uh, it's a similar thing. They timed it absolutely spot on because two
Hmm.
more laps, Piastri's passing Norris.
100%.
Uh,
Yeah, he did 39 laps on those tires, on those hard tires. And it was even though it wasn't the step difference that we had in Belgium, the pace offset between the mediums and the hards in Hungary was absolutely massive. And Piastri was a second a lap quicker than him for 15 laps as he caught him up. Like I said, they hit traffic then, and what hurt Lando hurt Norris. What hurt Lando hurt Piastri as well. The back markers, to their credit, didn't hold anybody up. So it
hmm,
wasn't a case of, oh, Lando always found them down the back straight and Oscar got held up in the corners. They were equally held up or not held up. So even that was perfectly fair, but there was none of this. Oh, McLaren gave him the favorite strategy. It wasn't. It was not the favorite strategy. Now, he's not the only one who did it. Plenty of drivers did the one stop, but Pirelli reckoned it was like 18 seconds slower. And yeah, if they hadn't hit traffic, there's a very good chance Lando finishes 18 seconds behind Oscar in that race.
hmm.
Lando didn't switch onto the hards thinking, "Oh yeah, put me on the hards and I'll win this race." He's like, "Put me on the hards so like I can recover back to the podium," is what he was thinking.
Yeah. And that was, I mean, there was discussions whether that was the full discussions because as we know, we hear select radio during the
Mm.
race, but there was discussions about do we do this pit stop to cover this? Do we do this to do that? And like I say, I don't think it's overly deep for us to discuss because I just think it just clicked. It's just one of those things. It's like you've watched football in your life, and same with rugby. Sometimes in games like that, your team just clicks. There's no real
Mhm.
understanding. It just works,
Just
and
worked, yeah.
you come away with like in soccer like a 3-0 win, or your rugby team's 4 or 5 tries ahead of their opposition, and you can't quite place why. It's the same folk, it's the same tactics. It just works. Everything you've tried in 4 or 5 games, it maybe not quite have worked.
Mm.
Maybe the pass didn't thingy, or you hit the bar, or whatever, or you were offside. Everything just failed, and the
And
striker scored every goal. And it's the same for Norris at Hungary.
everything worked for Piastri as well. It just worked a little bit better for Lando in this particular. They set two identical pit stops to set the fastest pit stop of the year twice.
Yeah, one point
Both
nine second.
drivers, 1.94 seconds, both of them. Lando's one stop and Oscar's second stop were both 1.94 seconds. So, and Oscar's first stop was like 2 seconds. So, even the pit crew were on total form. It
Hmm.
wasn't that, oh, Lando got so lucky because Oscar got held up in the pits. He didn't. Nothing from a
Yeah.
purely strategic point of view. Nothing at all went wrong or was hampered in Oscar Piastri's race. It just went a little bit better for Lando this time around. And to be fair, Oscar obviously was a bit disappointed to not win the race. He's a racer. He wants to win the championship. He wants to beat his teammate every week. He wants to win races. But he didn't get out of the car and throw a feckin' hissy fit, as he would have done if he had been put on a worse strategy and Lando had been favored to get the win from fifth. It's not what happened. Anyway, let's move on then to let's quickly touch on Mercedes. Podium for George Russell. He's back to just spawning back into the podium. It's a good result. 21 seconds off the McLarens, but 21 seconds ahead of Charles Leclerc. So in no man's land, right in the middle of nowhere. Started fourth, finished on the podium. Good result for George. But I want to talk about Kimi Antonelli, another tough, like this European season has been tough for Kimi since his podium in Canada, where he qualified 15th, which when George qualified fourth is not great. Um, and he finished. Now he made his way back up to the points, and he didn't get there on retirement because there's only one retirement. Ollie Behrman, he was Kimi was in front of Ollie anyway. Um, so 15th to 10th is a good recovery, but that's not good enough to be starting that far back. Where I'd say he's delighted to have a couple of weeks off, but what can Toto Wolff and Bono do for Kimi that they now can't do for Lewis, that maybe Lewis needs as well, but what can the support system do for Kimi now during this off season to bring him back a bit stronger in the second half of the season?
Forget about Formula One. He's almost in a similar situation as Lewis. I mean, he needs to be reminded he's a rookie. He needs to
Mm.
just, I think, because he's had such a good start to the season and it was relatively consistent. He was scoring, he was in the top kind of half and top 10, and then now he's DNF and he's 12, he's 13th, he's qualifying in the bottom three, I think he did over Belgium. Hungary wasn't much better. He needs to go away for a couple of weeks and just not really think about it because let's remember he's what, 17, 18, so he needs to go out and be as close to a 17 and 18-year-old adult as he can be. And then when he goes back into the car, he just needs to enjoy it. He's getting, I think, from an outsider, because when you've got a teammate in third, a bit like Lewis Hamilton, you've got a teammate in pole and he's 12th. You've got a teammate in third, finishing third, and I can't remember where he finished, way out the points and not in the pace. So it's not the car, it's him.
Mm.
And I think he's getting too stressed and he's attempting to overdrive the car, and you can't overdrive a car. When you overdrive a car, it goes backwards.
Is
Metaphorically
this
speaking, obviously. So he needs
is
to
is
just chill.
this raising the question that maybe Toto threw him in the deep water too soon at a top team? And I know everyone would say, "Oh, Max Verstappen's only 17." Max Verstappen was 17 in a Toro Rosso that couldn't even sniff at a podium and crashed all the damn time.
Hmm.
But he was in a team that was not fighting for wins and podiums and championships, where he was allowed to crash and make mistakes and have these issues with no pressure on it. It wasn't like Carlos Sainz in the other car was on the podium all the damn time. What are we maybe seeing the flaws in Toto's master plan with Kimi now?
Yes.
Not to blame Kimi too much, but more to shift the blame actually back to Toto.
Yeah. I mean, you can see it. Yeah. I think there was a tweet that I saw, and someone actually turned out and said he looks like he's been crying, and it was Kimmy standing at the media pen with the kind of red eyes, kind of blotching, the kind of look, you know what it's like when you've had a good cry and you're a bit upset about
Hmm.
something. Uh, and then he's had to come and speak to the media and try and do the media stuff, and
Hmm.
they basically alluded to that's a lot of pressure to put on someone who's 17, 18 years old.
Yeah.
In total, maybe has to think about that, and maybe. There was a stupid headline. I never bothered reading the article because it was in the Telegraph, but they said about is Lewis Hamilton trying to engineer a return to Mercedes because how bad Ferrari's going? Like, aye, all right, yeah, just go away, please
Mm-mm.
don't. I don't think there's any kind of situation where that is. If he
No,
decides to leave,
The idea of Kimi being shuffled to Alpine next year makes more sense.
anything that makes more sense than what that headline was. I didn't read the context. It could have been a clickbaity article, and that's part of the reason why I didn't bother. And also, it was in the Telegraph, so I really don't want to. But yeah, there has to be some questions raised about Kimi's recent performances. I mean, he has been unlucky a couple of DNFs were because engines went or power units
For
went, and
sure.
they did, and
Spain
it was
Spain wasn't his fault at
yeah.
all. Yeah,
I'm sure
that's
that
for sure.
off the top of my head, I can't remember. I'm sure there was a situation where he got damaged. It wasn't his fault. Was that it wasn't Belgium, it was the one before that.
Did he
Silverstone.
get rear-ended in Silverstone? Yeah,
Yeah,
Hadjar
Hadjar
rear-ended
went
him in
right up and he
Silverstone.
lost like 40 points of downforce. Like one half of his diffuser was gone, which you can't
Yeah.
drive back those types of cars without that. So there are a couple of caveats to it, but generally he's just not he's not stepped or like this is the other worrying point. So he's a rookie. You've got Bortoletto and Salva who had a wobble at the very start of the season, very famous. Um, and you can see the progression. You can see it going up, and that
Mm.
car's not outstanding. It's just a decently well balanced, good car, and you can
Well,
see
the
the
two of them,
progression.
Hajar and Bortoletto,
Yep,
but they've
and
both
they're
been allowed to be rookies in cars that are not, well, okay, the Sauber's a podium scoring now, but in cars that should not be on the podium. Kimmy's results, before we move on from him, first half of the season, fourth, sixth, sixth, 11th, sixth, sixth, between Australia
that's
and Miami.
very
Very,
respectable for a rookie.
very, very good. Exactly what a rookie in a podium quality car and race winning quality car actually should be doing, right? Really good. And he got the sprint pole in Miami, right? Very, very, very good. Retired in Imola, which that what he crashed out in Imola, I
Hmm.
believe. He was
Think
having a
so.
tough weekend. He had his whole classmates there. 18th in Monaco, that was the tired debacle. That was a bad weekend for Mercedes in general. George had his penalty for cutting all the corners. Retired in Spain, engine issue, not his fault. Third place in Canada, brilliant. Okay, so that's three races, Imola, Monaco, Spain, where he had bad results, which were not 100% his fault. It wasn't that he was, smacking into people. He wasn't Max Verstappen people into the wall at Saint
Mhm.
Devote. He just had that wobble. Some of it was his fault, some of it was not his fault, some of it was poor circumstance. Then he bounced back with the podium in Canada, which George won. Brilliant, brilliant result. But since then, Austria, he retired. Silverstone, he retired. Austria was an engine issue as well, if I'm not wrong. Silverstone, he got rear-ended by Hajar. But then Belgium, bad weekend. Really, really
Mm.
bad weekend. Hungary, bad start to the weekend, finished 10th. But the thing that needs to be considered with all of that, the results finishing are not all his fault. It's qualifying that has not been good.
Mm-mm.
He was in the position to be rear-ended by Hajar, who also did not qualify particularly well in Britain because he didn't qualify well in Britain.
Yep. It's the argument you have when you talk about Sergio Perez and the Red Bull. He got hit by someone at the back end of the circuit or the back end of the grid. Like, yeah, but he qualified there.
Yeah,
He
he shouldn't have
qualified
been there.
15, 14. He's
Yeah.
in a Mercedes that was constantly getting third, fourth, fifth, third, fourth, whatever, almost winning. So he should consistently be in the top 10 and away from the shenanigans at the back end. And that's the problem. And that's where and I think as a youngster who wants to prove that he should be in the Mercedes, he's putting too much pressure on himself and he's
Hmm.
forgetting how to just enjoy it and drive. And I don't mean enjoy it like it's a Sunday drive and don't give a brown stuff, don't care.
But
You just
enjoy it is
need
the
to
right term. Like
relax.
Hajar had the worst possible start to a Formula One career anyone could possibly hope for. He
Yep.
binned it on the formation lap of the season. Like that is awful. And then he had Helmut Marko calling him useless and saying he should be embarrassed, blah blah blah. And the kid was in floods of tears, and we all felt really, really bad for him. He has been my driver of the season since literally the following week.
Mm.
Um, and we're currently working on our rankings. We'll have a podcast coming out in the next week or two with the Everything F1 first half of the year rankings. We're asking all the team to rank their drivers and their teams, and we'll average it out and we'll share our thoughts with you. And I'll share mine already. Isaac Hadjar has been the number one driver of the season for me, all things considered. Obviously, the McLarens are doing really, really well. Max is outperforming a crap car. George is spawning in podiums, but all things considered, for the car he has, the teammate he's up against, the scenario that he's in, and the start that he had, Isaac Hadjar has been phenomenal this season. Um, but let's move on to the other side of the Red Bull garage. Um, Not a good weekend for Red Bull at all. Max Verstappen started eighth, finished ninth. Bad weekend for him. Pitted a lot, had to overtake a lot. Makes some very, very good overtakes into the chicane, which is rare, but I equally don't want to give him any praise for that because when everybody used to praise Sergio Perez for that, I got thick about it because he shouldn't be that low anyway. And even if he had bad qualifying, he's still in a much better car than everyone he's overtaking. So I don't find it as impressive. And they were all fresh tire overtakes as well. So I'm caveat that. But Yuki Tsunoda, I think, got really unlucky because he was only a tenth off Max in Q1 and he got knocked out in Q1, but he was only a tenth behind. Um, Yuki seemed okay with how this weekend went. It was not a great race for him. He started from the pit lane. They took an engine penalty. He probably would have started, I think he would have started 15th if he had 15th or 16th. And he finished 17th. So pit lane to 17th. Not a great weekend, but he seemed much more comfortable. And that qualifying pace is the big telling point, I think, for the Red Bulls this year.
Yeah, it's I don't know what to say about Red Bull at the moment. I just don't know what to do with the car. I don't know. Yuki Tsunoda's he's getting better, but I think that's more about Lauren Mecky's making sure that he has the
The
same
same car.
opportunities, the same car.
Yeah.
Aye. Like,
Yeah. First thing he did when he came in is give Yuki all the upgrades, which Horner
aye,
had held back from him for 3 weeks.
aye. It's like we all know that car's a tricky one to drive. So, like, why would you make it even more tricky? And why would you try and bury someone's career just because Max Verstappen's in your other car, who's not winning a championship, which we've known from the second weekend
Hmm.
of the season? Uh, but and it's unfortunate that Yuki got knocked out, so a tenth behind. But then I think you would like to think that Red Bull would see that as that's progression. Like,
That's
okay, yeah, he got
progress.
knocked
Yeah.
out, but he's only a tenth. It's only a tenth behind Max, who's
Hmm.
won in this car. I think. So that's where Yuki should have been at the start when he got given the opportunity to drive it. So like I just don't know
I,
I don't know where Red Bull go from here.
no, neither do I. But what's even worse about that, it just shows how unlucky Yuki was. His time in Q1 that he got knocked out with was a 1:15.899, right? 1:15.9, let's say. Max's time in Q3, which he set for eighth on the grid, was a 1:15.7. So even two qualifying sessions later, yeah, I know the conditions got a bit worse. Yuki was still only a tenth and a half off Max's Q3 lap. So by all rights, Yuki had a much better weekend from a qualifying point of view. But as we said, when you qualify that far out, especially in a track like Hungary, you're not going anywhere. You just sort of have to take your. I think what Yuki will take out of this is Zandvoort is a very high. Sorry, Hungary is a very high downforce track, and we actually spoke about this last week after Belgium. Is that we now go into a run of high downforce tracks, which seems to be the issue that was affecting Yuki. Putting downforce on the car dulls out that loose back end, which seems to suit him a bit better. Like I said, I think he just got unlucky because the car suited him better, but the car was just slower. The other cars were faster. The Astons were faster. The Saubers were faster this weekend.
Yep.
Zandvoort, you'd have to say that's probably going to be the case as well. But I think if he can stay within that tenth, 2/10 of Max, that is the improvement that if you know what you're looking for, and you'd like to think if Christian Horner didn't, that Laurent Mekies does, that's the improvement they'll want to see from Yuki.
Well, look, Laurimekis has already came out and said that he's not looking to get rid of Yuki this season, and he will
Mhm.
spend his time to support him.
Good.
Which I think is the one thing that Sonoda's probably or Yuki's been missing is that team principle just to say, don't worry about getting replaced.
Mm.
We'll support you for the rest of the season. And that's a statement. I
Mm.
mean, Laura Mekies isn't asked. I wouldn't imagine Laura Mekies just came out and said, "Is it all right if I say this?" I think he's made a point of saying it.
He's in
For
charge.
anyone else who wants to, for a certain person, advisor that's in the garage that might have some other things to say,
There
that he's
also
come out.
wasn't there also wasn't any cross team orders this weekend. Liam Lawson did not get out of Max Verstappen's way during the race, where I think maybe a month ago he would have very, very, very quickly
Hmm.
when Mr. Horner was like on the race wall with a picture of his dog and
Yeah.
threatening. Um,
I think there's always with Christian Horner, there's a wee WhatsApp group message or or a wee meeting beforehand with that other team.
just
By
remember
the
if
way,
the
lads.
yeah,
Yeah.
when that Red Bull comes up behind you, you move now.
What's the safe word?
That didn't happen.
Pineapples.
Yeah,
Pineapples.
exactly. But let's hope that you can kind of continue that form, and let's hope it starts to translate into some points. Not sure if Zandvoort will be the one. It's hard to see, but again, that bit of security and support from the team principal can't do any harm. Sauber, what a tale of two races for Sauber. Gabriel Bortoletto qualified seventh, finished sixth, his best result in Formula One so far. He got driver of the day, and rightly so. Nico Hulkenberg, by comparison, started 18th, really poor qualifying, and recovered up to 13th. So, okay, recovery, and by Sauber standards in the midfield, that's a good recovery. He finished behind Lewis Hamilton. But let's talk about Gabriel Bortoletto because as we mentioned, himself and Hajar have been up and up and up and up and up, and he had a quiet enough start to the season as the reigning F2 champion. I think he maybe had a little bit more. I don't want to say weight of expectation because there's other rookies who had way more expectation on their backs. I think Bortoletto was, despite being the F2 champion, came into this as a bit of an unknown himself and Hajar. And what a job he's doing. Really, really great drive. And it wasn't by accident. Like he overtook Lance Stroll to take that sixth place, finished 2 seconds ahead of him, and he was only 5 seconds, 6 seconds behind Fernando. So it wasn't like he was in the middle of nowhere with a weird tire strategy. He was there on pace for the whole weekend.
Yeah, Gabriel Bortoletto's kind of like where I put. He's my Hajar. He's my driver to your Hajar. If you get what I'm saying.
Mm.
uh, like he came in with it wasn't really an expectation to be amazing, but it was just like he's got a bit of talent, keep a wee eye on him. And initially you're like, but then we had to remind ourselves that he's in the Sauber. Then Sauber got that upgrade, and then we've realised actually they've got a decent car for one.
Mm.
And whether it be oh, what's his name? The team principal that's in there now, ex-Ferrari guy, with the
Otto.
glasses. That's the one. I could see his face, couldn't get the name into my head. He's come in and made these changes that he's had to make. The Audi have supported that because they've realised they're going to drop a step back. But Bortoletto is just, he's a talent and he's going to get picked up by somebody further up the grid in a couple of years' time, I've got no
Mm.
doubt. Unless Audi come out next year and they really do well and they're in consistently the top 10, then well, why would you want to move? If you're in a project and you're performing and the guys like you, then you don't move. But if a Ferrari or McLaren or Mercedes come in
Zach
or Red Bull, I think you kind of have to think about it.
Zach Brown is not an idiot. I will be absolutely dumbfounded if there is not some sort of a buyback clause in him being sold off to Sauber, to Audi, because he's a McLaren junior. He won F2 for McLaren in a McLaren branded car. Yes, okay, they've got the best lineup in Formula One this year, probably for the next few years, but I would imagine Zach Brown is keeping very, very close tabs on Gabriel Bortoletto for the next couple of years.
Of course he is. Most teams are, but if McLaren have been smart, and I think Zach Brown almost alluded to it with the whole Ricardo situation where they didn't have any performance clauses or break clauses, and they basically
Hmm.
had to give him, was it something stupid like 30 odd million or something?
There's some crazy amount of money,
Yeah, they
yeah.
had to basically pay him his wages not to drive for them.
Yeah.
Which in this day and age is a bit silly. Uh, so
Happens all the time, though.
it does happen, but I think what I'm meaning is, generally speaking, now they have break clauses and perform. I mean, even Max Verstappen has that.
Has a performance
So
got yeah, yeah.
you
They're getting
know,
much more. They're following kind of the what's becoming the modern football rule of we're going to pay you an absolute metric fortune if you hit all of these goals. Yeah, on paper you'll be earning 300K a week, mate. But if you don't score a goal every week, you're earning 5K a week. It's not that
yeah.
dramatic. But it's based on performance, and there's a break clause if you don't score 20 goals, if you don't score 20 points in the season, then you don't get your bonus, and we can actually out whenever you want, kind of thing.
Yep.
But equally, from a McLaren point of view, selling off Gabriel Bortoletto, one, I think Audi bought him out of this contract for about 5 or 6 million. So it wasn't like he was let go for free. Audi Sauber bought him from McLaren. Um, but
Which also has to be applauded because they've
for
committed to
sure,
someone that's clearly some people that have done their homework and went, there's
mm,
something in this kid.
this kid is
Because
special. Yeah,
you're not spending 5 6 million on someone who's never driven in Formula One before, who's only just won the
dude,
F2,
they
who's
could have
with one of
taken
your
literally.
rivals.
They could have taken literally any other Formula 2 driver or
Yep.
any of the kind of shunted off test drivers and paid nothing.
Mm.
But they paid for Bortoletto. So they're seeing something in him, and I think the wider F1 community is starting to see it now as well, which is fantastic. Moving on then to another green car that had a very good weekend, Aston Martin, and this was a good weekend for both drivers. From pretty much the first turn of a wheel in practice, Stroll looked like he was on the pace. Fernando took a little bit longer to bed in, but once he did, 44 years old, qualified fifth, finished fifth. Stroll seventh, good result for him. I think it's his best result of the season so far. Unfortunate, it would have been that little bit better if he'd have clung on to sixth and they'd have finished behind each other on the road. But this is comfortably Aston's best weekend of the year so far, and you'd have to expect that car will work just as well in Zandvoort in a month's time.
Yeah, I mean, if it doesn't, there's something seriously wrong.
Mm.
High downforce, very twisty, very narrow, very similar to Hungary in that respect. And it's kind of what you've expected of Aston all season. Whether
Yeah.
this is something to do with Adrian Newey, like there's not much he can do, but maybe there's a couple of like set up things, or maybe he's noticed a couple of wee tweaks. Again, it could just be circumstantial variables, and they managed because the biggest thing about these cars are the window to get them exactly where you want them is very, very, very narrow, and pretty much every team is not quite hit it every week. Maybe with the exception of McLaren, maybe they've got a car that's just a wee bit wider in terms of setup or can handle not being quite in the middle. But Aston Martin and Belgium were horrible, were hopeless.
Mhm.
They were at the back end of the grid for most of that weekend that I can remember. Stroll, maybe Alonso not quite, but Stroll, I'm sure I remember being near the rear end of the grid for most of the weekend. And to come back and consistently, I mean, they were shading off pole positions or first places during free practice. They were always up at the top end, and it's just the kind of result that they've been needing all
Yeah, for
season.
sure. And it's perfect time for them to get it right. Like they've got into the summer break now on that high. The whole team, like they got the whole team can go off on their summer break thinking, okay, we've done something right here, lads. We've something to look forward to for the second half of the season. And I had the standings up in front of me here. They're on 52 points now. Are they still 52 points? I thought they had more than that. Yeah, 52 points. They've closed the gap even more now to Williams. They're only 18 points behind Williams now. And all of a sudden, what we've been talking about for the first half of the season of Williams are kind of in that no man's land that Aston themselves did last year. And they'll just cling on to fifth. They won't. Williams had an atrocious weekend. One of their
That's
like they've had a terrible run of form.
That's just the way it is, and I think it's not necessarily anything they've done, it's what they've not done. I think everyone else has just got a couple of wee upgrades that are just catching them up because they started off really well and but they stopped their upgrades very much within what first one couple of races.
Mm.
Uh, and I don't think many people have been that close. Maybe Haas, I think, were one of the others that have kind of stopped early on. I'm not sure if that's right. Uh, and I think that's just because other teams are progressing better as they understand their car a bit more, as they put a few upgrades, and it could be minor things, just that. And you've touched on it's a second between first to 20th.
Mm.
And if an
Yeah, it's
upgrade can
tight.
give you, if you can get an upgrade that gives you 2 tenths, then
It's
that's
the
the difference
difference
between Q1 and Q3 these days.
for
And that's the
sure.
difference between 5, 10, 15 points. And when you're in that group, that's all the difference. And I think Williams are going to struggle. I think Williams are going to struggle to even not be last with the way things are going in all honesty.
Yeah. Obviously they had that two six places in Spa, sixth in the sprint, sixth in the race. But it's that old school thing of relatively low downforce high speed track just suits Williams because it's a rocket ship in a straight line. It's a DRS train. Um they're going to struggle to get too many of them for the rest of the season. They got Italy, and Alex Albon is going to spawn a train in sixth in Italy. I'll call that right now because
Mm-hmm.
it's just what he does. And the back straight in Baku will help them, but the rest of Baku will not. Singapore, Texas, Mexico super high downforce, even though it's a big long straight. Like Sao Paulo, Vegas should work for them, but that's what two, maybe three races where you think that's a Williams track. And the car is better, it works in more windows than it ever used to, but if this Aston upgrade is what it looks like, there's more high downforce tracks through the second half of the season. There is low downforce tracks, and Aston will, I think, come into that with much better form and I think results to come. It's going to be really, really interesting to see how that goes. And Sauber aren't out of the running either. Sauber are on 51 points. Sauber are only 19 points behind. So there's all of a sudden we have a battle for fifth in the championship for the second half of the season, which is quite exciting. RB, quick one. Result for Lawson, finished eighth. Hajar, not awful, finished 11th, just outside of the points. Saved Ollie Behrman his blushes for finishing 11th for the fifth race in a row. Um,
Fair enough.
anything major on RB? Eighth for Lawson is a good result.
No, they just did what they did. And yeah, Lawson's, I think Lawson's a decent driver. And once he got
Mm.
himself out of the way of being in the Red Bull, he really, that RB is a nice, generally
Perfect car
just a
for
nice
a rookie.
car.
Yeah,
It's
it
not
is.
peaky, it's not front end, it's not back end, it doesn't misbehave, it just does what it says on the tin.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what you need. And it was a respectable weekend for RB, I think is probably the best way you can put it.
Yeah, I agree. Well, Lawson's got a sixth and eighth and an eighth in the last four races now, so it's a good run of form for him. Haas, not great.
No.
Really not a good weekend. Ocon started 17th, finished 16th. Behrman started 11th and had an under tray issue and retired. That's about all there is to say about Haas this weekend. They're starting to slip, but again, I think to your point, they have well since given up the ghost on this season, potentially rightly. They're 15 points ahead of Alpine, and the last one to touch on is Alpine. Uh, Gasly started 16th, finished 19th.
Forgot
Frankie
they were there.
Colapinto started 14th, finished 8th. Colapinto outqualified and outraced Pierre Gasly for probably the first time this year, but he crashed in a post-race tire test, so he balanced that out really nicely.
Nice. Nice. Well done.
Good Alpine result there. That'll do it for the sum up of the race. Do you agree with the call for Gabriel Bortoletto being driver of the day for that one?
Yes. I think it was the closest one. Was it not like 14, 14, and 10 or something? It was
Quite
really,
close
really close.
between Lando and Charles were up there as well. It was quite close. I voted for Gabby, and I'm glad he got it. But yeah, it was a close one. I think any of the top six could have earned it, to be honest.
Yeah.
The McLarens both had perfect races. Like they didn't put a foot wrong, either of them. Russell did very well to spawn into a podium. Charles Leclerc did everything he possibly could in a car that was braking. Fernando Alonso, best result of the season. Gabriel Bortoletto, best result of the season. Even Lance Stroll, best result of the season. So top seven, I think all were within a shout. But I agree, Gabriel Bortoletto, all things considered, deserved it. It's his best result in Formula One so far. Let's have a quick look at how badly we predicted this.
Oh dear.
I have them here. I'll do James first because he's not with us. He predicted a pole position for Piastri, which was wrong.
Hmm.
But his top three, he got Norris, Piastri, and Verstappen. So two out of three. He got the third one quite wrong. Um, but his wild shout was a three-car crash at the first corner, which did not happen. There was no crashes, no safety cars. The only retirement was Behrman, and it wasn't from crash damage. So if you look at it that way, it was a boring race. So sorry, James, you got that one well wrong. So Coops, your predictions. Do you remember what your predictions were?
Yes. And I remember how bad they are.
Yeah, you got one position right. You said Verstappen on pole.
Mm-mm.
No, quite nearly out in Q1.
Mm-hmm.
You said Verstappen win.
Mm-mm.
No, I don't know what Kool-Aid you were drinking this weekend. Piastri second. You got that one right. Hamilton third.
Damn.
Yeah. You did say Norris to have an issue. You didn't
Yeah.
really clarify what though. I mean, you had a bad start.
Yeah, well, it's an issue that would have stopped him getting the top three. I just
Then no.
my logic was that like they've been that bulletproof that one of them's going to get something that's not like a crash issue, just something that's going to stop them getting what they should have got. But yeah,
Mm.
anyway, never mind. Move on. Move on.
Well, I must have been drinking from the same Kool-Aid as you this weekend because I said Max on pole.
Yeah, we were kind of it was a
Yeah,
50-50 split between like the four predictions that I wrote down between
my
Verstappen and Piastri.
mine
What's yours?
gets worse.
Oh dear.
Um, I said Max P1.
Uh-huh.
No. I said Lewis P2. No.
Oh dear.
I did accurately predict that George Russell would spawn into third place, and that's exactly what happened. So I'll
Okay, give you
claim
that.
my moral victory for that. My wild shout was no McLaren on the podium, and we were a centimeter away from that.
We were,
One
but
centimeter. If Oscar Piastri had braked a centimeter later, I would have called that to perfection.
that's all it takes to be a genius or an idiot.
That's it's the fine line.
It is the
There we
fine
go.
line. And I'm not saying you are an idiot because I got them spectacularly wrong as well. I actually don't think many of our predictions have been anywhere close. I
No,
think
I
we've had
think James can claim the high ground for that one. He predicted Norris and Piastri first and second.
He did.
Um,
Oh no, he got the top
so
two. No, well,
yeah, he did.
actually, I think we need to mention Morgan because he put his predictions
Yes, he
into,
did. Yes,
and he did. He put Piastri on pole. Didn't happen. He
close.
put Norris, Piastri, and Russell as the top three,
Wow.
and he said that Williams would get double point.
Ooh, okay. Well, he deserves a
So
cookie. He deserves a cookie for the podium.
he got the podium right. But
He did
I
get the
don't think
podium right.
any of our predictions in the team or any comments that anyone's done that.
No, no one's come anywhere close to
And
that all year.
I didn't click until I was just reading because I was like, oh wait a minute, hold on.
Well, there you go. Well done, Morgan. You have a cookie coming your way
No, the
from your
amount of
dad.
money I spent in that boy like Belgian Grand Prix, he's Huddy's cookie. I can assure you, you can get the gold star and you can have the ego boost, but that's as much as he's getting.
Well, that'll do it for us. A couple of comments came in from YouTube. Thank you very much. If you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to head over and hit subscribe and join us when we go live in future. Sam says, it's rare to say, but Hungary was one of the better races of the season for a pleasant change. He goes on to say that might say more about the poor quality of the other races this year, but still, Hungary was enjoyable. Yep, completely agree. I really, really enjoyed that. Not just because Lando Norris won, which of course he did, but that was a good race, and there was lots of good storylines to come out of that one. That'll do it for us for now. That's the end of Formula One for the first half of 2025. We will be back. We'll be back next week. We are going to do our ratings of the first half of the season, as I mentioned at the top. So we'll have that next week. And we are going to share a couple of classic interviews, including from one Mario Andretti. We will be resharing that interview from a couple of years ago. It was fantastic. It was really, really enjoyable, once in a lifetime experience to chat to such a legend of the sport. And he even, before the Cadillac news was announced, dropped the nugget on us that he knew that something was going to happen about 6 months before it happened. So he kind of gave us an exclusive on that. We'll reshare that in a couple of weeks. Do check that out. It was a really, really good one. Mario was an amazing person. He gave us a lot of good time and a lot of incredible insight. So we'll reshare that in a couple of weeks. Be sure to hit subscribe wherever you're listening, so you can be aware when that comes up. Thank you to Coops. Thank you for joining me for this one.
Thank you very much. Pleasure as always.
We have been Everything F1. I've been Sean. You can find us on socials, Facebook, Instagram, X, and Threads at JoinEF1 and TikTok at EF1 Official. Check out our website, everythingf1.com, for daily news and articles. Even during the F1 off season, we will still have content going up there every day. And check out our sponsors, theraceworks.com, for all of your F1 and motorsport merch, and use our code EF1 at checkout for 10% off site wide. That'll do it for us. Enjoy the off season. It'll be back before you know it. We'll be back to preview Zandvoort in the week leading up to Zandvoort. Enjoy your holidays. We will talk to you soon. Bye now.